Hello and welcome to Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. Today, our special guest is Lester Crafton, and Lester Crafton is over in Tennessee, and he is the co-founder of Ovanova. What's up, Lester? What's going on with Ovanova?
Oh man, what an open-ended question. Sean, thanks for asking. Thanks for having us on. I've got sunshine in my face. And we're just an energy team. Have you heard about the national energy emergency that we're in?
I've heard of all those three words before. You could probably put them into any order and I'll probably have heard of them, I guess. How about let's change it to the national energy opportunity?
There you go.
I like making it optimistic.
Yeah, that's how we look at it. It's just like, oh, cool. So we're deciding to plug in AI data centers and return American manufacturing and put EVs all over the grid. Awesome. That's exactly what we need to do. So how are we going to create the power to do that? And so we're working on how to actually do that. We've been working at it for about a decade now. So our mission, which we've had for a decade and people have told us to change it, is to add as much value as possible to as many lives as possible as soon as possible. We picked energy as the vector for that because adding value usually requires doing work. And from a physics first principle standpoint, energy is just the ability to do work. So not all work makes things better, but more energy means the ability to do more work to add more value. And it's something that touches everyone. So we set out on a quest about a decade ago to figure out how to make it accessible to everybody.
Well, the energy that I had to do this work right now is these friends of mine from Panama at RE Plus gave me a chocolate bar and I just had a bite of it. So that chocolate bar is my ability to do work. It's got some calories in it, which is energy, which can be converted to kilowatt hours.
This is correct. For your brain to use, which is a remarkably efficient computer, especially compared to an AI data center. I hope you enjoyed your chocolate bar. Was it a special chocolate bar or just a chocolate bar?
Yeah, it was special Panama chocolate that had hot peppers in it. It's really good. Yeah.
Sounds delicious.
Yep.
That's a great example.
I didn't have too much and I'm going to the gym after. So as far as Ovanova, I think you do microgrids, right? Is that what your main thing is?
Yeah, that's not how we start. That's where we are now. I would say that that's our specialty is microgrids, energy resilience.
Okay.
But we didn't start out that way. We started out 10 years. Would you like to hear how we started or you just want to get to where we are? Or?
Yeah, sure. That's fine.
Yeah. We went out to California in 2014 to knock on doors selling solar because we heard we could give solar away for free, Sean. We didn't understand that we were selling PPAs. That's how little we knew at the time. Quickly found out that our values were irreconcilable with what we had seen in the industry from our brief exposure. And we set on a different path. From a commercial standpoint, customer acquisition cost was too high. We understood that to be a function of trust. We believe that when trust is high, the cost of doing business is low. And when trust is low, the cost of doing business is high. And so we saw customer acquisition costs as a trust thing. So we thought, okay, well, who do people trust? And it turns out that people trust churches, schools, nonprofits, little league sports teams, bands, you name it, where people come together to volunteer their time. And what those guys all had in common is they needed money. And we didn't want to send the money to reach people to Google or to Facebook. So we decided to give it to churches and schools and nonprofits instead and basically bribe them. So when their supporters would come and learn on a Zoom about solar, we would make a donation, even if nobody bought anything, just for hosting an info session. That led to people in 27 states that we were able to install little power plants on their properties, some solar storage. And we interconnected with over 60 different utility companies without ever doing any marketing at all, except for supporting good causes. The next thing we came up against is that we realized, well, it's great that we have these people all over the country that want solar, but sometimes the construction doesn't go as well as it should. And so we started a construction company. That was about 5-6 years later. Now we're unlimited general and electrical contractor. We could build skyscrapers or bridges if we wanted to. And recently, we discovered some security vulnerabilities in hybrid inverters. We reported those findings, and the findings were just presented at DEF CON 33. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. It's a cybersecurity conference. And we solved that problem now to make microgrids scalable. And we're working on some other hardware. We have a patent pending portable energy trailer, part of our portable energy technology line that is really cool that we could talk about if you wanted to. And a lot of initiatives that are basically centered around how do you create secure microgrids on properties that have all of the smart stuff that you could imagine, from load shedding, load shifting, full battery integration, About 5 years ago, we decided we weren't going to offer solar without batteries once we found out the grid impact and how great batteries could be for the grid. So we just got way ahead in batteries by making that decision. Only other notable fact is 2023, 2024, we figured out how to rearrange Inflation Reduction Act incentives in such a way that we were able to make microgrid projects available to rural communities in disadvantaged and distressed areas at almost no cost to them, and in some cases, no cost to them whatsoever. So we signed up $100 million worth of projects that we'll be putting up all over the country as some percentage of that as the grants are approved from the USDA REAP program. So that's who we are in a nutshell.
Great.
It's a lot to it.
Yeah, so maybe we could talk a little bit about microgrids. So microgrids are defined in different places differently. So in the National Electrical Code, a microgrid is something that can connect to and disconnect from the grid. And other definitions, it could also just be never connected to the grid. And some microgrids can be really small, even like part of a house, just the part of your house that you're backing up. And then other microgrids, like they could be like a town or a village or something like that. So sometimes a microgrid is just a little grid tie battery backup system. There's actually no specific definition or cutoff where it's too small to be a microgrid. I suppose somebody could argue that the PV system that I put in my suitcase for doing trainings is a microgrid. If it can be grid tie with battery backup, it could be a microgrid pretty much. Well, it has the ability to connect to and disconnect from the grid. My little suitcase one doesn't do it automatically, but I could still make it do that. And then of course you can have a microgrid that's like a town or something like that. So there's just all kinds of different definitions of a microgrid, a small grid. They don't have a such thing as a macro grid, I guess, but they call it, a utility or,
It's called the grid.
Power production network, anything like that. So how big are the microgrids that you're working with?
Well, thank you for asking such a good question. And all of those things are microgrids, and we can and have installed all of those different types of microgrids. What we are focused on, I would say, is a very specific type that is geared towards the highest form of energy resiliency imaginable. So first of all, any microgrid has to have some type of generator, like you have to be able to generate power. And so obviously the best way to do that, the sunlight, it's free, it's there, it's every day, no matter how long of a outage there is, it's going to return, it's going to fill your battery. So we started out with the small ones in people's homes. Then we did some off-grid systems, and the projects that we've been installing, imagine like a supermarket or a sawmill. And we just started working with towns to do some really cool stuff that I believe is unique, that I'm happy to share with you, that is for an entire community that answers the what do we do when we can't get enough power to where it needs to go question. But microgrids, you have a generator, you have some type of storage capacity. We like to have additional assets. So we like to include generators as part of our microgrids for the 3 or 4 days.
Sometimes people will even call like solar and wind a generator, like you see it on some diagrams or something like that. But I think you're talking about one of those evil internal combustion engines. No, I'm just kidding.
One of those. It could run on hydrogen too.
Which is an internal combustion engine that does not make carbon dioxide as a byproduct. It makes water vapor.
Pretty cool. And it's a lot closer than people think. But right now we use propane because after Hurricane Helene hit North Carolina, Sean, we went over to a little town called Marshall and we found somebody that had solar panels on a roof, which was obviously worthless after a storm. I don't know how many people know that, but solar without storage has...
Well, I have heard of some people with hurricanes, like even a long time ago, where they have like solar and rails, and they have the solar and the rails on the part of the, like one part of the roof, and that part of the roof doesn't fly off sometimes, where the other part of the roof does, because the rails sort of reinforce the roof. And then as far as batteries go, a lot of people are getting batteries these days just because they're not allowed to export for full credit anymore, just as the industry matures. And the price of PV goes down, the price of batteries go down, the amount of solar on the grid goes up, and there's going to be too much energy for the grid to take, so you're not having full on net metering. and then you will have batteries. And if you have batteries, a lot of people figure that this is America and we have kind of like a prepper mentality, and we like to have battery backup too. Whereas like if you go to a lot of places like Germany or something like that, they're not going to get battery backup because the grid doesn't go down, or barely.
Well, solar without storage ought to be illegal. It doesn't make any sense. It's not scalable.
Yeah, we should throw those people in jail. That's right. It should be illegal. We lock them up. We should we send them to Guantanamo and all that kind of stuff? Or solar without storage, I can't believe that.
We should just better educate people about the fact that some of the stuff that the people in conservative places say is actually true. Yeah, intermittent
thumb screws for solar without storage.
They ought to, because if you don't, you end up forcing AC coupled batteries. You end up losing 30% of the possibility of actually integrating V to X charging because of the 5 flips that it goes between. There is no integration possible. A truly integrated microgrid isn't possible, but it is possible to take these giant batteries on wheels, integrate them in such a way that it can support the grid. Unfortunately, most auto manufacturers have chosen a system that only works when the grid is down. So maybe we'll be able to island some houses when we're sitting in blackouts 2 hours a day in 2030, if the Department of Energy predictions are correct.
Are you a prepper?
No.
So you don't have like dehydrated food and all that stuff? I have chickens.
No, we have a region center in North Carolina that's got 100 fruit trees and the greenhouse is being built. But that's just because how in the world could you say that you're on a mission if you can't have energy access, water access, food access? So no matter what happens to the economy, Sean, we're on a mission. So it goes a lot deeper than that. The solar industry is, from the last decade, again, we installed in 27 states. We connected with 60 different utility companies. So we got a really good idea of the lay of the land and what was going on just because of the unique path that we took through the industry. And I was citing a Department of Energy report that says that by 2030, there are going to be 2 hours of blackouts a day. Solar without storage isn't going to do anything to help prevent those blackouts, and it's not going to help people to have energy themselves without it. And if people do solar without storage to begin with, just to try it out, then they're going to end up with a bad technological choice that will limit their ability to use their batteries as intelligently as they could be used to actually guard the grid. So that's where I might seem real hardcore about saying things like that. I obviously don't think solar without batteries should be outlawed. There's a use case for everything.
Oh, you don't want to throw them in the slammer for life?
No, but it could be one of the most egregious crimes against humanity that's being committed because it shows a lack of technical understanding that's preventing renewable energy from scaling in a way that we would all like for it to.
I guess like 20 years ago, though, when solar was like way more expensive than it is, where it was like solar modules were like over $5 a watt a lot of times just for the modules. And it was like we could barely afford a solar system with rebates and tax credits and everything else. And there was no way that we would use batteries and actually like make it cost effective or get any kind of return on investment. And there was no renewable energy, or there's barely any solar on the grid at the time, like some little fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent. So the grid could take everything we could send to it. You put solar on the grid 20 years ago and it would barely be noticeable.
Drop in the bucket, yeah.
Yeah, and so back then, solar without storage was like, that was the way to do it, and that's the way that everybody did it. And I still have an old net metering policy because it's an older PV system where I get 100% credit for exporting. So for me, the only reason to have batteries is in case the grid goes down, and where I live, the grid goes down like, on the average, an hour a year, maybe something like that. So is it worth it for me to pay like the extra, whatever it is, $10,000 for an hour a year?
Yeah, well, that makes one assumption that isn't true, that used to be true, is that the only value to batteries was on-site backup.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with ERCOT's program or Eversource's program up in Connecticut for distributed energy resources?
Well, I should be with Eversource because I do work for the CT Green Bank. But I know ERCOT is the big famous grid operator over there in Texas.
Yeah, well, Eversource is probably the best in the nation at using a managed approach, and ERCOT's probably the best at using a basically just come and play approach. Eversource, if you had a basic battery, like 30 kilowatt hours of storage, you'd probably make somewhere between $5,000 to $10,000 a year by participating in peak grid events. So grid operators, 99% of the time, they're fine.
Can you say that again? Like for how big of a battery and how much do you make?
Yeah, if you had a 30 kilowatt hour battery, which you would want if you have a home with a 200 amp service and you didn't want to size it.
Yeah, it's like 30 kilowatt hours is like bigger than average, I would say, for a home. It's like, a lot of home batteries are somewhere around 10 kilowatt hours.
Yeah, it's just not enough. It's just people that don't understand the difference.
But if we have bidirectional electric vehicles, then it's like everybody has double that much.
Except for it doesn't integrate unless you make the right technology choices first. But that's a whole different story we can get into. And you're right, though, if it could be integrated correctly, and there is a way to integrate it correctly, then you do unlock your car's battery to provide these things. The $5,000 to $10,000 a year is by allowing Eversource to say, hey, for these 3 hours a day, we would like to call on your batteries if they are needed. And based on the number of kilowatts that you can provide, not kilowatt hours, but kilowatts, it's averaged out, it's a formula, but we will pay you for supporting the grid. And in Connecticut, it's actually less expensive to go solar with batteries than without batteries due to the incentives. And almost nobody knows that because the solar companies running around can still sell net metering. In Texas, you can sometimes earn $5 per kilowatt hour that you send back. That only happens 2 or 3 times a year, but it is very regular that you can sell it for 25 to 50 cents. And so there's energy arbitrage situations that solar only customers simply can't participate in. And that is the future of energy, because what it allows is grid support that's intelligent. When the grid has too much, like you keep talking about, then that's what the batteries are for. Like close the circuit, open the connection, and say, come on in. And one of the things that I would say that batteries really weren't ready until we got bidirectional hybrid inverter chargers. But when SolarSEAN came out, EG4 came out, the Tesla Powerwall 3 came out, those are actually Chinese, all of them except Tesla, but they won't be for long. And that is the piece of technology that makes batteries accessible, affordable, and functional enough to begin to participate in those games. And so that's just a technological choice.
Yeah. I was just thinking when we were talking too, that we were talking about solar without batteries should be a crime. If we wanted to, maybe we could start a crime ring and we could steal Teslas and then use them to make all that money up there in Connecticut.
Let's do it.
Okay.
That sounds great.
Then we'll take those Teslas, we'll hotwire those batteries, and we'll use that to support the grid.
There's a super strong case to be made.
And we'll keep making all those $5,000 and $10,000 for 30 kilowatt hours.
Definitely possible, definitely doable. Except for the stealing part, that you'd probably get caught with that pretty soon. But other than the stealing, the better.
I know some people.
Some Newark people. That's close enough.
Oh yeah, that's some of my best friends. Yeah.
Those are real fun dudes.
That's why they have me teach all those classes with all the cool guys.
There's an inverter that came out. It's Chinese, so it'll probably be going away pretty soon. But SIG Energy has a really good inverter that allows for V to G integration. It works with most models. We've discharged a Tesla with it, a Rivian with it.
Vehicle to grid.
Vehicle to grid, yep.
When you're exporting, like you said, a Tesla and a Rivian and all that kind of stuff, are you figuring out ways to take the cars that are not bidirectional capable and figuring out how to trick them into being bidirectional? Or are you taking the ones that already are? I heard maybe the Cybertruck, and I know for sure the F-150 and some other cars, and the Nissan Leaf for a long time.
It's a voltage architecture thing. Most of your battery systems are 48 volt architecture. That is not the voltage architecture of an electric vehicle, which is 400, 800. Most of them are 400. So what SIG Energy did was they actually created a 400 volt architecture so it natively integrates from a hardware perspective. But you still have to have a software handshake, which is why the things on the Ultium platform, like the GM stuff, it won't work on there, but it would if we called GM and they said, of course, we'd like for you to discharge this. Unfortunately, we're trying to sell our own little piece of equipment that has no V2G functionality, but will allow you to use your car like a generator or a battery if the lights go out. And it's sad because it's a solution that's a partial solution that if people were thinking integratively about their microgrid from the beginning, they would choose the right equipment. And right now, people just don't know what that is. And I can't vouch for any type of equipment. We still have bugs and stuff that come up. It's new, but the next generation of equipment I would expect to be 400 to 800 volt DC coupled architecture. So to answer your question, are we finding a way to put, it's all, if you have the right hardware, it's all integratable. but then it just becomes a software handshake.
So like I have a 2015 Model S, 85 kilowatt hours. There's no way I could make that connect to the grid, right? That you know about?
I have not played with the software enough to be able to answer that question with integrity, but I don't see why not.
Probably like the Tesla software.
Yeah, but the Tesla software works fine in the 2016, but if you have a 2005, that might, you already have free charging if you got the Model S from back then. Do you have the lifetime free charging?
Oh, sure I do. Yeah, that's why I want to go get free electricity and then go send it to the grid and make buku dinero over there in Connecticut.
Yeah, you can do
supporting the grid. Yep.
Happy to help you wire it up. Not a problem for our team.
And then all those Elon haters, they'll be proud of me for taking his electricity, which is not even stealing because I have free supercharging for life. So yeah, it's not even that fun if it's not stealing, I guess.
You can for sure charge up it with your lifetime subscription, go and unplug it, plug it into your wall if you have the right inverter set up, and then you could discharge it and you could get paid for that. Like, it's called the Connected Solutions Program, I think, and they're popping up all over the country.
I remember there was somebody that was Bitcoin mining from the trunk of their free supercharging for life Tesla. It was just a demonstration thing, but they were like driving around with a Bitcoin miner in the back, so that was kind of fun.
We used to install Bitcoin miners and HVAC systems to heat people's homes in the winter. Yeah, for their extra electricity. We're like, what are we going to do with this extra, before we figured out batteries, like, what do we do with this extra electricity?
I was almost going to make a class called the Bitcoin battery that was just to figure out how to use Bitcoin miners to heat things.
Yeah, that's exactly what we did. We just stuck them in HVACs, and it's like during the summertime, it's piped outside. During the wintertime, it heats the house. So you're getting paid to heat your house. You're going to heat your house anyway. And it is a battery in the sense, if the point of the battery is financial compensation, then a heck of a thing to do with electricity is to print a digital currency with it.
And then right behind me, I know most people can't see, but you can, there's a sauna, and I'm going to turn that into a Bitcoin sauna. With all my extra solar energy.
They have some liquid cooled Bitcoin miners now. It'd be interesting to see if you could make that work.
Okay, well, we'll have to talk about how to do this. How do you do this?
Yeah, I haven't used any liquid cooled Bitcoin miners yet, but happy to continue the conversation afterwards about how it could work if my partner were able to get it on. I'm sure he already has thought through this.
Yeah, I mean, we could even talk about it now, I guess. So I know that there are people that are doing this. I know somebody said that there's somebody up in, I think it's like Sonoma County in like the wine country that's got some Bitcoin hot tub up there or something. I know that there's some sort of a spa in New York City where it's like Bitcoin heated hot tub and stuff like that. So people are doing it. And it's also a thing that could be sort of like a diversion load or a load that you can turn off and on. So let's say that you invested in an extra big solar system, and instead of curtailing power, or instead of getting barely any credit for exporting, what you can do is you could, send it there. You make a little bit of money for doing the Bitcoin, and you make the other part of the money by saving money on your heating. So you're double doing it.
Yeah, it's exactly what we did. We've got probably 4 or 5 systems with Bitcoin miners across America, and we thought that's a cute, novel thing to do. Mm-hmm. Now let's get back to, creating true energy solutions that don't disappoint. Because people are disappointed when they don't, for us, the battery thing is really about disappointment. Because it's disappointing when the power goes out and you don't have power, like that little town in North Carolina after the hurricane. So we hooked some batteries up to their solar, and a little store had power for 47 days without a generator. But sometimes you need a generator. That's the truth. And so you hook a generator up. So you want solar, and you want a generator, and you want batteries, and you want smart load shedding and smart load controls, and you want it to be secure. And if you have that thing, you have an answer to the Americans' energy opportunity that we find ourselves in.
Are you sure you don't have a little prepper in you?
Well, I grew up on a farm. It's impossible to not have prepper in you if you grow up on a farm. When you grow up and a machine breaks and you realize that you don't get to complain about the machine breaking, the machine has to be fixed. And it doesn't matter how long it takes or how hard it is. People will not be clothed and will not eat unless you fix the machine. That maybe creates a different sort of mindset in a human being who grows up that way. But the thing I don't like about the word prepper is because most preppers I know believe that the world is going to fail, that humanity is doomed. And I don't believe that. I just believe that everybody here can do something to make a great one.
Yeah, I wrote an article on like solar preppers in the Solar Today magazine, I don't know, a couple of issues ago.
Cool, I'll check it out.
I just think it's kind of fun. Like prepper has some fun to it. I would love to have a bunker. If I have one, I guess I wouldn't be able to tell you. And yeah, it just seems like it's kind of neat. Not that it's going to happen or this end of the world's going to happen, but you are kind of prepared for it. I know some people, they're like stocking up on ammo and all that kind of stuff. I do remember there was this guy, John Wiles, who was like the solar code guru 15 years ago and 25 years ago and in between there. And I remember when he would teach the NEC classes, a lot of times he would be like, okay, how many of you people like me have all these tens of thousands of rounds of ammunition at home and all this kind of stuff? And I thought that was kind of funny. And so there's just like a lot of people that want to be prepared. And I think like too, if you look at Americans and, people like our ancestors, most of our ancestors like came here from some other place and we're just kind of on the go and always ready for something to happen. It's kind of like that American feeling that we all have, whereas like a lot of us are just, want to be prepared for stuff. And so that's one reason why I think that battery backup is a lot bigger of a deal in the United States than it is in Europe, even though, and I'm sure in Europe,
the ethos.
Yeah, the ethos. It's like Americana.
Especially in rural America where we are, people do not care about starving plants who grow plants for a living. And talking about reducing CO2 is talking about starving plants. It does not resonate. But unlike an hour a year where you are, out on grid edge communities, it might be an hour a month. It usually isn't that bad, but it can be. And if you're in a city and they put a line back up, 10,000 people get lights. You only get 6 people who get lights when a light line falls after a tornado. So it's a longer process. That's why, but it makes sense everywhere. Like if people knew how inexpensive the technology actually was, it's a no-brainer at this point. The only thing standing in the way is there's not enough people like us that know how to actually design it and install it. And we hope to teach a whole lot of people, through our nonprofit work and other things we're doing, how they can do that to make it affordable.
Yeah, and kind of where I am too, there's a lot of wildfires. And so that's a reason to have battery backup, because one time a fire came to our place when I was living up in the Sierras, and everything in the refrigerator rotted, and it was so stinky that it's like you might as well just throw the refrigerator away. And so if we had some backup there, we did have solar, but we didn't have backup because back then it wasn't
there yet.
Yeah, it's like, it was a lot more expensive. It would have been lead acid batteries, like kind of a whole different thing.
No, I'm grateful for the era that solar went through. I'm glad that the politics created an urge to reduce carbon and that people recognized you could do that with solar energy. But the thing that really happened is that solar got inexpensive enough and battery technology got inexpensive enough and the inverter technology caught up in time that now it just does not make sense to not have storage unless you're afraid that you're not going to be able to sell something to someone. It's about your fear as a solar company and offering batteries and then upskilling yourself to be able to do it well. It is not about the market and what it's willing to receive.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's time for batteries. Here's why I believe we're in trouble from a prepperage situation. If AI scales, Elon's computer in Memphis, 45 minutes up the road from my house, will use more power, Sean, in an hour than a cotton gin where I grew up that gins 10,000 acres of cotton, which does the work of about 150,000 and formerly enslaved people could do in a month. So 1 hour of a computer equals 1 month of a giant industrial machine running. And if you're keeping track of the news, you see that we're building these things everywhere. And the AI scaling law says that when you 10x compute, you get double the capabilities with your AI. So you have to put 10 times more compute. That means 10 times more power, which means that we're very rapidly approaching an era where we have computers using more power than cities. And we're not prepared for that because we didn't upgrade our grid the last 30 years the way the Chinese did. Mm-hmm. And we can't build the big power plants fast enough. We can't build the lines to get the power from the big power plants fast enough. So the only real hope for a bright future for our country is for everybody who can to choose to produce their own power in a way that can actually not only provide for their own needs intelligently, but support the grid while it's stressed. And I have deep fear about this. If the jobs go away, like everybody says they might from AI, and from using it for 3 years seems inevitable to me, I don't know how people pay their mortgages. I don't know how the banks remain solvent. I have fears about that. That makes me think the preppers might be right this time. But on the other side of that is the greatest world ever, because we don't want to work anyway. Like, we sure as heck don't want to work to keep the lights on when the sunshine can do that for us once our equipment is paid off. You know, we're so close to living in a world with a super abundant amount of energy that allow us to connect and to create and to share and to have experience after experience after experience that I want to live on the other side of that world. So energy security between now and then seems pretty important to me.
Great. We interrupt you for a very important announcement. Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast has been brought to you by Sean White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. That's right, Sean White is sponsoring his own podcast, and he wants to remind you to go check out some of his classes. You can go to SolarSEAN, that's Solar, SEAN.com, and then click on the links to check out his classes. You can check out his heat spring classes, and you can also hire him to teach classes for you, like at your company, something like that. Now back to the show. So another thing that you're doing now is, you said you're doing some trailers?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so tell us about your trailers. Like, what do you have in those trailers? You got batteries, you got solar, you got generators, or what kind of stuff is in those trailers? And can you tow that trailer while it's charging your electric vehicle?
Interesting. You technically could do that, but man, that would be a weird, dangerous thing that I would highly not recommend. But technically, you could do it.
I knew a guy, his name's Scott Cornell, I still know him. And he had this electric Karmann Ghia that he would race. And he was in my class, in my advanced PV class at Diablo Valley College, probably 19 years ago. And they had an electric car show, and they were all homemade electric cars back then. Like, you know, it was 19 years ago. You couldn't go buy an electric vehicle. All the GM EV1s were off the books. And I remember he still has it. It has a bumper sticker that says, "I've been driving electric vehicles since Elon was 10." And he would go to these electric vehicle shows, and sometimes he needed, you know, to have more range, and he would tow a trailer and he would charge it while he's driving, and he'd still be charging it in the parking lot while he's eating lunch from his generator.
And I admire the pioneers who were there so far ahead of everyone else. Like, after doing some pioneering work myself, I appreciate how challenging it is. So cool friend to know, cool person to know.
But yeah, I just thought that was kind of cool. So you have your trailers, and I think I saw a picture of it briefly. It's got batteries in it, I imagine. You've talked about generators.
Yeah, I'll tell you all about it. So it came from doing the relief work after Hurricane Helene, when we came to the mountains. And we brought all this fuel and all this food and all these supplies, and everybody just wanted to plug into our F-150 bed and our E-Silverado bed. They wanted power. After a disaster, the first thing a community needs is power. FEMA's only option is to pull these big generators in, and who knows where they're going to go, how it's going to be coordinated, if you can even get it in, if the bridge is down, if the pipeline is broken. There are just all kinds of problems. So what we thought was, well, how can we create power that people can count on in disasters? And then what else could it be used for? So we took the technology you would want if you lived in a mansion in Connecticut, and then we put it on a trailer. So what's on this trailer? There are 4 different models. I'll talk about just the one that most people have seen. One, there's 64 kilowatt hours of storage. There's 2 bidirectional EV chargers on there. Why that's important? Imagine you're in a hurricane disaster zone. And you have a trailer there that's got batteries on it, that has solar on it, but you're using a whole lot of power for maybe dialysis machines or something really important that people need power for. There's plenty of power output on this thing. You have over almost 23 kilowatt hours of AC continuous output. So it's significant. It's a significant amount of power. Getting back to why the bidirectional EV components.
Oh, that sounds really cool. Where do you get the bidirectional chargers to put on your trailer?
That's the SIG Energy that I was talking about. It used to be called Point Guard in America. It's SIG Energy. And we were the first people, which is how we filed for a patent, to use this in a mobile application, because we recognize the utility of being able to plug an electric vehicle in to discharge into the trailer. So you can drive your EV into town that is destroyed by something, and then instead of charging your EV, you discharge your EV to leave power for the town, as if you had brought a tank of fuel to the town.
That's really cool. But are those bidirectional chargers, are they made for off-grid, or do they work for both off-grid and on-grid? And when I say that, it's like, just look at that bidirectional charger. It's sort of like an energy storage system inverter in a way. And would it be a type of energy storage system inverter that could also backfeed the grid? Or is it just made for these standalone operations like what you were talking about right now?
Well, that's one of the things I hadn't gotten to yet that makes this technology. And so let me continue with the generation capacity, and I'll answer that question just because it sets up better that way. And we also have a generator, propane generator, because there's not enough space on a trailer to reliably fill it up if you have super high usage. And in a disaster, saving lives means more than saving the planet at that moment. So we believe in clean power. I believe climate change is anthropomorphic. I believe all that stuff, and none of it makes any difference at all unless you're doing something to show people how valuable energy resilience is. And then obviously solar becomes a part of that. But turning EVs into fuel convoys for disaster zones is a big deal. The way that it works and why it can integrate with the grid starts with the technology. It's a DC bus bar. So the way that most V to X stuff integrates is just a weird little inverter type thing. This is a direct connection to the DC side of the system so that the car battery is essentially just like another home battery or like a set of solar panels. And the way we hook the generator up is so it is also DC coupled, which is part of the patent too. And that way you have your all of your generation, whether it is a solar panel, a generator, an EV, does not matter. All of that feeds one common system that can then go on. So now, to not confuse this anymore, we thought it would be a travesty and poor stewardship, Sean, to be in a situation where we had all these batteries and trailers sitting in parking lots waiting for a disaster that couldn't be hooked up to the grid. So we used a microgrid integration device. We call it leashing your PET, our portable energy technology, portable energy trailer. It's a PET is the patent or the trademark name for it. And so we just call it leashing up your pet. So when you have a pet at your church, at your volunteer fire department, even at your home, part of the price is connecting a microgrid integration device to the facility so that when it is parked there, it can do load shedding, it can do load shifting, it can do grid support services. And if you wanted to put a bunch more solar up on the building, it can just plug right into the pet when it's not there. And because we made it easy to plug and unplug, it also means is you can rent it for festivals or weddings or whatever when you're not out in a disaster zone making it a hero. And you can pull it with a pickup truck. So it can get in anywhere fast.
Cool. All right.
Yeah, and it's the first trailer that I'm aware of on the market that is grid interoperable because of the technology that we chose and the way that we hook it up.
So that is super cool. So it's grid interoperable. It can export to the grid. It can obviously do standalone loads. And you can, I'm sure, charge it with the grid, and it has a generator on it.
Yep. It can also be charged with an EV.
And you could charge it with an EV, and you could, of course, charge your EV with it.
To keep vehicles from being stranded.
And you could just like take this energy and just move it all over the place.
Yeah, it's portable power everywhere. So, I mean, you just pull a pet up in a disaster zone. You have a stranded EV because it didn't charge up enough before it came, and now there's no electricity. You plug your EV in, you charge it up, you drive your EV 45 minutes away where there is power to a supercharger, you fill it up, you bring it back to the disaster zone, and very important services can continue. You can charge drones to go look for people who can't be found. You can do one of the things that we're getting ready for over in the mountains of East Tennessee and Western North Carolina is the wildfires are coming. All those trees are down and they're getting ready. They're drying every year. So being able to have places and communities that have access to power, it's just bringing light in the darkness literally to people and giving them a reason to keep it there. Even if you plugged a pet into a gas station. Now, there are ways in a disaster without the microgrid integration device to plug it directly into a building. You wouldn't want to do that long term, but nobody cares in a disaster. So you could power a gas station so people could get the diesel for their generators if you needed to. But without power in town, ask Marshall, North Carolina, what it's like to be without power for 47 days. And if you do believe that the storms are getting stronger, then you recognize it's going to take a citizen-led solution to be able to make this work. There have been other solar trailers we've heard about, a couple of them that were like huge scams back in the day, which we didn't even know about when we did it.
Oh, I heard something about that. Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't even come about it that way. We came about it because we saw a need and we had the technical competency to put it all together, and had been working with integrating batteries and generators and smart controls. So another thing that it has is there's load shedding at the facility. And all of these things, Sean, this is what the grid is going to need to survive what's coming. We didn't build out any generation capacity. We plugged in EVs. We returned American manufacturing. We cranked up AI. I don't know what we were thinking, but we were thinking whatever we were thinking, and it's the situation that we're in, and there's a way out. It's just called produce your own power and do it in a way that integrates with the grid in the most intelligent possible way, allows the batteries of the car to integrate with the grid. So if you don't care about V to X, any inverter works. Like, it doesn't matter. You want a good, cheap inverter that is affordable, that does great work. You got your SolarSEANs, you got your EG4s. We love the EG4 guys. They're good dudes.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And there's a million different bidirectional inverter copies that are coming, but SolarSEAN and EG4 are the ones that brought it to America, distribute it. We brought it to America at about the same time EG4 did, but we installed it. And when we installed it, not long after, Sean, the Chinese turned the lights out at my partner's house. So from China, they hijacked an inverter. It wasn't nefarious. It wasn't malicious. It was a firmware update.
Uh-huh.
And at first that bothered us because it's like, man, are they going to do this to all of our customers? What a pain in the ass this is going to be. They didn't tell us there was going to be a firmware update. But then it occurred to us, wow, power just got shut out in the United States from not inside the United States because nobody is paying attention to this. And these devices are capable of a severe grid impact when aggregated. And specifically because they are used to provide relief for peak power. So if you can imagine a world where you have 100 million little microgrids out there intelligently coordinating America and making us feel safer than we could ever be, because you're not going to have 100,000,001 missiles to knock out our energy production. We would be safe. Energy would be safe unless there's no cybersecurity. And then one afternoon, when we've gotten used to those batteries helping, they could be flipped in the other direction and turn the peak into an Everest peak. And that's lights out for everybody for a long time.
You know, I've even thought too, like if there was some hacker that could control all the inverters or loads or electronics or heaters or HVACs or whatever it is, you could overcurrent things, and you might be able to turn everything on all at once and burn up a transmission line or something like that. You know? Yeah,
and there's lots of fields on the macro grid. They have $1 bazillion worth of cybersecurity infrastructure, and it's very challenging. What is unique to these devices, which are new, is that your air conditioner, if you have a 3-ton air conditioner, you're using 3,000 and 3,500 watts. A basic bidirectional hybrid inverter charger is 11, 12,000 watts. That is a huge amount of power that is regulated like a refrigerator, because it's on the customer side of the meter. And on the customer side of the meter, the utilities never cared because there's never been technology that could have that big of a grid impact. The good news is it can have that big of a grid impact when we need to impact our grid positively, and everybody can chip in and be a part of it if they set up right. The downside is that it's not cyber secure, and we proved that by hiring a cybersecurity firm, doing findings, and they presented them at DEF CON like about a month ago. I mentioned at the beginning of the show. So for 1.5 years, we've been working with Department of Defense contractors to figure out a way to eliminate that threat so that we can continue to deploy the technology our grid desperately needs.
Mm-hmm. So how do I get one of your trailers?
You can go to our website, and I'm sure it's on there somewhere, Portable Energy Technology. Go to ovanova.co and get in touch with us and figure out which kind you like. Look up Ovanova on YouTube, and you'll see some funny videos of some of the trailers in action after a flood. But came up with the idea in April, filed for the patent pending in May, had 4 prototypes now in September. Just had somebody call and order 10 of them the other day because they're a big contractor, and we'll have to do a custom application for them, but they have to run the air conditioner for 20 hours a day on a job site. And so they need somebody that can say, yes, you can definitely do that. Solar's not going to do that. Solar and batteries are going to do that often, but not always. But solar battery generator means that you're not running your generator very often. And when you are running your generator, if it's DC connected, it's just going straight to your batteries. And it's also evening out that sine wave So you're not damaging your microelectronics. So your inverter is cleaning up all that power before it goes anywhere.
You know, another thing I thought too is because it's movable, it's not like a permanent installation. And I'm sure you would need an interconnection agreement, or, you know, I'm not sure how you could get an interconnection agreement. I guess it would be different in different places, but it would avoid having to go through with a long, lengthy process of building something, and, you know, with the permitting and the AHJ and all that kind of stuff, to just have a trailer and sit there, and then you can take it different places too. You got that option. But while you're not doing other stuff with it, I assume you want to make use of it and plug it into your building. You know?
That's what we thought. We thought, what a waste of these batteries and this awesome technology if we can't hook it up to the building at a time when buildings are going to need it, especially.
Yeah, and the grid needs it.
And the grid needs it, and concerts need it, and weddings need it, and festivals need it. And so it's about $400 a day that you can rent it out for at a fair market rate. So it doesn't take long for it to pay itself back. Yeah, you could plug it into your building, or you could rent it to your neighbor for a wedding, or to not wait on a temporary electrical service drop to start building.
Have you tried to get an interconnection agreement with it for like at your building when you're going to be there?
Yeah, no problem, because it's the same technology you'd have in your house. The only difference is it's all already hooked up in the trailer. The hardest part of a solar installation is not the solar. That is pretty easy. It is the batteries and the inverters. So another advantage to doing it this way, we believe, is the scalability of it, because it's a lot easier to build something and roll it than it is to roll a crew out to a site to build it. And so you're getting more reps in, and you're getting more training for the type of men and women that we need to be able to install this type of technology everywhere.
Great. Yeah, and I'm just trying to think of like what part of the National Electrical Code it would work with. And I noticed that I'm making material for the 2026 National Electrical Code, which just came out. And there's another article now called Article 624, but it is for self-propelled vehicles. But I'm just trying to think of what part of the NEC you would use for a trailer.
It's just an inverter with a microgrid integration device. To the utility company, it's a UL listed inverter. So it's no problem. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we're doing too that you might appreciate is we're working with some of these rural electrical cooperatives who don't understand the value of storage yet. Their customers don't have any, they haven't invested in it. And if we can pull like 10 trailers up along the distribution line so they can see the numbers, oh, wow, that really helped clean up. Have you had a lot of guests on talk to you about reactive power and active power?
Oh, sure, yeah. Reactive power, power factor, all that kind of stuff. It's very important. And it seems too like it's just like super cool because you can move it and you find out you put it in one place and times change, or you figure out like it would be better here. You move it down the road a little bit.
Or you move and you want to take it with you. And that's one of the biggest things people say about solar is, what if I move?
Or maybe say the utility owns 1,000 of these things, and in the summertime, they keep it on one part of the grid, and in the wintertime, they put it over by a different substation.
Exactly. Or they have a big festival coming to town and they take them all and hook them directly into the lines that need all that extra power support.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like one of the things that we did recently, I'm really proud of, is as we signed up all of those farmers for the grants in 2023 and 2024, we were putting up batteries, megawatt hour batteries in some of these projects. And so it created an open door to begin having conversations with the utilities, and our mindset flipped from solar guys where the utility is the bad guy and they have all these dumb rules, to really understanding what the utilities are going through and what they're thinking about, and having a lot of empathy for what they needed. And what they need is they need smart load controls, and they need the dispatchable storage that's secure. And so being able to work with them, we said, okay, well, we developed some software where you can actually just push a button and discharge all of our batteries whenever you want to. We'll let you use it so that you can see it's worth something. And then you can decide how much you want to pay for us. That's our give first mentality, that we like to do things that way. We just start out by giving and seeing and forming partnerships. And so this utility, we ask, where does it hurt? Where are you having trouble getting power out to the edge of your service? And they said, well, there's actually this community. It's a yoga community that's moving in out in the middle of rural Tennessee. And they need a lot of power. They need like 30 megawatts. We can only deliver like 5, and really we can only deliver 1 safely to make sure it's enough. And we don't really know how to solve this problem other than charging them $15 million to reconductor the lines or to build their own substation. And so we said, how about this? How about we limit the amount that we can suck from your lines with an inverter, and we'll limit that to 1 megawatt. So you never have to worry about us asking for too much. We will trickle charge a giant battery system. And then on the back side of that, we'll hook up a generator, we'll have B2X, we'll have smart load controls, and we'll have a whole lot of solar. And then as the community grows, we'll just put solar and batteries up on each of those properties so the load isn't, so that the big battery remains the same. And then we can intercoordinate it all. So we're in the process, and that might not sound like a big deal, but what that creates is a way to do new construction in a time of electricity scarcity that it seems like we're very likely to we'll be facing within the next 5 years.
Cool. Awesome.
So we do all kinds of neat stuff. Like, we just have a lot of fun. Like, our crazy mission to be useful for people, to add as much value as possible, as many lives as possible. Sounds idealistic, but when you're working in energy and you're creating real energy solutions for people, we can do it. After we figured out that the current stuff that we're putting up is insecure, and we knew how valuable it is to the grid, and we figured out a solution to that, the next step was, well, it's not made in America. We probably lost, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, because of the domestic content adder, which is one of the bonus tax credits in the ITC. You just couldn't qualify for it with integrity. You could qualify it with a bunch of loopholes and exceptions, but to actually qualify for that wasn't possible. And we scoured the nation and are still scouring the nation looking for domestic content stuff. So we just decided recently that we're going to make it ourselves. We're going to take what we learned in the last 10 years. We know what needs to be built. We know there's a gap in the market. We know what's not in America, and we're going to build it. So that's what we're up to now, is building the hardware and the software. It'll take a couple of years, but we just started a private placement round for that. So happy to talk about that all day long, or not talk about it at all. But yeah, we're just an energy team.
All right, good. Well, I've got an idea. So we have all this trouble getting things from other countries. Why don't we just take over China and make that part of the United States?
Well, that's why I believe we're trying to take over Canada and Greenland, is to have the resources that we need to produce energy.
Canada, Greenland, why not just go for China?
Oh, we might.
Then we would have like over 1 billion extra voters there too.
Yeah, it'd be like Canada or Mexico trying to attack us when China becomes an electro state and we're still a petrochemical state. We don't have a chance to compete against China with the amount of electrical generation that they're doing. They're ahead, and it's going to take Americans doing this weird American thing. Like, most of the world thinks America's a trailer park anyway. We might as well turn it into one and solve our grid problem.
With your special battery trailers.
With our pet.
Hey, I might have been conceived in a trailer, so don't give me too hard of a time.
You're not the only one. My partner grew up with a single mom running around places like that. I wish you'd had a chance to meet him tonight, but he was on solving some energy problems and then had to get to yoga. So
okay, all right. Well, we've had a pretty good conversation. I enjoyed talking to you, Lester Crafton.
Super fun, Sean White. Thanks for having me on. Anytime you want to hear more opinionated stuff, and I promise not to advocate for people putting solar up without storage to go to jail. But I do wish that the industry would consider how valuable it is to become really good at batteries and realize that is the way forward, and it's going to be great for everybody. You're welcome to join us.
Okay, yeah, I really like talking to you. And I think you had a quote, turning EVs into a fuel convoy. Is that what you said?
For disaster zones. Yeah, turning EVs into fuel convoys for disaster zones.
For disaster zones. I thought it was so cool that I wrote it down. And you have your pets. And what is that called? Portable energy technology?
Yeah, that's portable energy technology is the whole line, because we have a portable energy tank. We're going to have a lot of different applications of portable energy technology because we know how to do it. But it also means portable energy trailer in this case. So it means multiple things, but that's what pets are. And
tell us then where to find you and how to find your company.
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook, but you can find our company at Ovanova, OVANOVA.co. Like the sun comes up, Ovanova. We might as well use it to make electricity so we don't pay our electricity bills. Ovanova. Humans like using electricity. I think it's the biggest difference between the 1800s and today is the work that we've done in the last century because of all the energy we've had access to. Go to ovanova.co, and I'll keep saying this Ovanova again until everybody realizes, oh, okay, this makes sense. Let's all do it together.
All right.
And solve this
Ovanova.
Ovanova.
All right. Thank you so much, Lester Crafton of Ovanova. And thanks for listening to Shaun White's Solar and Energy Storage Podcast. To find out more, go to SolarSEAN.com and get yourself NABCEP certified. That's the North American Board of Certified Energy Practitioners. And then you could be qualified to work on an Ovanova trailer. And probably Lester Crafton would hire you to help them make trailers, right, Lester? Sound good?
We're going to have pet breeding facilities all over the nation.
Okay.
So you're welcome to join us. Thanks,
All
John.
right. I love those pets. All right.